Nou, echt met anno 1753 doosje veroorzaakte even een reflectie. I promised myself and some of my listeners on my podcast, Stem van Rotterdam, that I would start doing every recording in the English language. Because even though, due to the fact that I was born in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and that is one of my primary language that I speak. To make myself heard to the rest of the world, it would be best if I speak this language. Suddenly, something comes to mind that I had bumped across about 2 years ago when I was digging into language and etymology, the different languages, Sanskrit, the Anglo-Saxon languages, and I discovered that I'm just going to give this as an example because I want my listeners to keep this in the back of their head as I continue to record any or every subject that I am interested in, because it has to do with the world, and if it has to do with the world, it has to do with me because I am in the world, so it's affecting me also. In the English language, the way things started out, the way they started translating or trying to understand other languages that were spoken around them. The English language actually does not tell the whole truth when things are being translated. For example, the word God, heavenly, goddess, was translated in the Aviaanse, that's how they say in Dutch language, as being a demon. But they were describing angelic beings, an angelic persona, a god, a goddess, a being of light. In the English language, that was translated as to being a demon. This fact alone has led me to think that a lot of, for example, translations that have been done according the span of the last hundreds and hundreds of years, translations on original documents, tablets, engravings, ancient Bibles. I think the Ethiopians have a Bible that's over 800 years old, intact and complete. It pictures and colored people. I'm slowly starting to, in the back of my mind, wonder what effect this might have had or still has today on language, how we perceive each other, how we read each other's history, how we translate that to our own. Let's say I find a document that was written in ancient Sanskrit, and I'm trying to translate this document into English so I can send it back home so my people can read, can have an understanding of what it is that's going on. Now I'm translating it into the English language, but I just said that the English language contains of certain translations that mean the exact opposite of what was stated. So now I'm dealing with this issue. It's giving me headaches on the fact that mostly after, especially during the 14, 15, and 1600, book printing started to get making books or new literature. I will call it new literature, as in copying, and then they would call it literature. Copying ancient texts from ancient lands, translating that into the English language, whereby the story will get changed. Because if you're talking about angels and you're translating this story and using the word angels and replacing that with the word demon, it's going to give a very different. I love the sun shining on me. It's winter. I had to put my table on the other side of my living room just to be able to do this. Let's sit closer to the window, of course. So these translations, this history on the evolvement of language, and specifically the English language, because the English language has predominantly been used by colonizers, just say it what it is, which then in their day wrote their history on their terms, favoring their winnings. Everything was based on lies to begin with, but now I have to look at everything that was written, published after 14, 1500s, especially starting from 1600 onward. How much truth does it hold, really? Are they all fictional stories of rulers then that wanted to create a narrative for their progeny, their issue, to have something to bloat or gloat with? I don't understand, because you had nothing when you came here. You had nothing. That's that. I have so many issues I want to touch on, and because I'm such an unorganized person, I can dibble dabble in chaos. But the way I translate things, it's either through poetry or via song or via my podcast. But these are all issues that are bigger than life. And I'm almost amazed, surprised really, that nobody had taken the time, because it took me a couple of weeks. And I remember a couple of weeks ago, I recorded something whereby I said, I fixed it. I understand what's going on with the world, how everything happened, and how everybody was fooled into believing the stories that we today still believe. Most of us still today still believe. By just touching on different subjects and reading different articles that have been brought out by scientists, by professors, by doctors, people who hold titles, studied people, other people that have been able to grasp success with nothing. Have a stage on where they can stand and have an audience they can speak to, because they will be heard. Because if there's money in your bank account, people will listen to you. It's sad. They won't listen to you if you're just telling the truth, but they will listen to you if you have money in your bank account. Let's just say, I'm gonna just put my TEDx in there. Let's just say I have a fictional bank account for now. Let's just say I have an immense wealth to my name. Let's just say that. But I just don't know it, because my identity is not who people think, who it should have been. No, let me say this differently. My identity has been given to me. My identity is not what I had to fight for it. I had to reach for it. I had to study and dig for it. I had to be beaten for it. I had to be disgraced for it to find my identity. I'm talking about only this fact. I had to be dishonored, displaced for it. And I stood fast and I held my ground and I succeeded eventually. But now I've come to this notion that now just knowing who I am really, who the born person Neuza Encarnação Andrade, born in 1978, a week after summer had started. What those names mean, where they come from, the severity, the gravity of what it means. And then the fact that I also traced back, because before I even figured out, or before the truth about my biological father found me, because it took, I was 42, 44 now. I was 42 when I found out who my real father was. I had done a DNA test, A, to prove two different DNA tests. One to prove that my stepdad was in fact not my stepdad. I do carry his last name, but that last name was given to me 4 years after I was born, when they wed. So for the first 4 years of my life, my complete name was Neuza Encarnação Andrade. But then they changed that, and I'll come back to that later. So then I did my DNA testing, and the paternity test came back with my stepfather as being 0% possibility that he could possibly be my father. So there's that. About a year later, my real dad reached out to me, because I don't know how, and I know how and why. But that's another story for another day. My life is a movie. I can tell you it's a movie. Several movies with several sequels and prequels and more gossip. I did another test to find out what my ancestry was, because before I knew, because all I knew at that time, that my stepdad could not possibly be my biological father. So then I was faced with the fact, okay, my mother came to the Netherlands. She got pregnant here in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. By the time I was conscious enough to be in the world as a child, and luckily that happened very, very quickly. We were living in a house on the Lissofstraat in Rotterdam, living in with a Dutch elderly man who I keep. His name is William. I called him Uncle Will. He's also the person that taught me how to write when I was 3 years old. So thank you. I became a poet, a writer, yada 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 yada. He took us up in the house. So I was living in a very weird circumstance with my mother, my elder sister, who did belong to my stepfather. I then did not belong to him. So she actually made an unwanted one after she had, but they didn't have a relationship. There was no relationship type that they were boyfriend and girlfriend. I know they had met up in Portugal. My eldest sister still lived in Portugal. My mother became pregnant of her second daughter. My stepdad had already went to the Netherlands and lived in house with another Cape Verdean lady that he also had impregnated. So my other sister has a half sibling there. And by the time that my mother chased him down to Rotterdam, and he was in Amsterdam, and she came to live in Rotterdam. And this is the place where she, then the story goes, met my uncle, because they seem to be related. Their mothers are first cousins. In the span that my stepdad was away whilst my mother was pregnant with his child, my uncle came, and somehow, somewhere along the lines, the story goes that my mother or they fancied each other, and because she was pregnant and needed assistance with the baby, visiting the hospital, doing checkups and echoes, my biological father would do that for her. So he was present during the birth of my elder sister, who was birthed by another man. Are we getting the complete story of Nilsa Gomez? Okay. But then my biological father disappears. He went to Japan because they were all sailors. They were all on boats working for the Norfolk Line and all the other companies. And he had to go to Japan, and his mother told him, who lived in Germany, that my mother was pregnant by him. And by the time he came back from Japan with a very nice clock he had bought for my mother, my stepfather opened the door and he was like, dude, I thought this thing was settled. And he's like, nah, because she got my daughter and you left, and then she became pregnant. But, and then the story goes that my biological father and my stepfather had a conversation about, okay, so, you're with her now? Okay. Are you going to take care of my daughter too? Because, and I'm talking about it very lightly, but it's not very funny because this is a conversation about two grown men discussing the possible future of two young children, young girls, who were then either going to be raised by the one or raised by the other. Or they could have said, yo, no, take your black child with you. She was born white. It looked okay, but then she turned color. I was born like this and then I turned like that. Um, they could have given me to my biological father, "Yo, go take care of your seed yourself," but that never happened. So I stayed in the house with Oma Villa, my mother, my stepfather, and my then older sister. I already had another elder sister. That was the first, but she was dropped off by in Lisbon at my grandmother's doorstep and was being taken care of by my auntie, this my mother's younger sibling, who also both have different parents. Anyway, so it's very confusing to just in this whole story and everything that comes extra, what extra things lives can give you. Almost thought I wasn't recording, but I'm still recording. Whew, that was almost 18 minutes of my life gone. Um, and then trying to make sense of it all. But because my life has been so, let's just call it explosive, um, because everything was happening at the same time, and trying to keep a sane mind is very not so easy to do. Um, I know who I am. I know my heritage now. I have found out via my ancestry DNA and my heritage DNA. I used several sites just to check, to double check, because sometimes you find things and it's mind blowing. Even for me, I've dealt with a lot of things. I've seen a lot of weird things happen. I've heard the weirdest stories. My life in itself is a story that you could fit almost every Hollywood, Bollywood, Nollywood movie into my life, and it would still be my life. It's like I've lived this life now, but I've been dealt cards as if I had to live like 33 different lives in one. That, having said that, I also had to create when I was younger different characters in one, because it's impossible to deal with everything from just the one mind. So I had to split and be the professor. I had to split and be the teacher. I had to split one up and be the student. I had to split one up, be the child. I needed a father figure, so I became that. I needed a mother figure. I became that. I needed protection, so I became my protector. I needed food on the table, so I started working. So I was also the man of the house, but I'm also the cleaner of the house. I do the dishes. I do the shopping, I do the cooking, I do the eating, I do the sleeping, and I'm the one also who ends up having to suffer from my menstrual cycle that has been running rampant since I was 12, bleeding at least 11 days. And as we speak today, I'm on a menstrual cycle that has been going for 6 weeks. I'm still alive. Birthing pains. I'll just say it's all birthing pains. Birthing pains. Um, might be fitting for the time that this world is in right now. Um, sometimes I look away because I have a screen. I'm sure people. It's a view of Castello di Rivoli, Giovanni Paolo Panini, and Palazzo Madama, to be found on Google Arts and Culture. Sometimes I see something and it's so beautifully placed my second, and I'm there, you know. I was on vacation. Hey neighbor, I live ground floor, so my neighbors can see me. It's more like I am watching them. It looks like my hair is turning red at the end. It grows out black, turns brown, and then it gets red at the end. It's natural stuff. Or it's because now, even in other colors, my hair looks red, especially when the sun shines on it. That's cold. I'm gonna need I have some things that I wrote down. I do write down things. On different, depends on how I feel. I write things down. But I'm talking about on the issue of everything. My two topics. Let me just close off the last. Just to be able to find out who I was a battle in itself. And now that I know, I'm dealing with. Now, what do I do with all of this information? The information that I've also started like a process of retrieving my birth name, because my birth name was taken away from me without my consent. And afterwards, when I was 12 or 13 years old, my mother divorced from my said stepfather, and she got to change her name, but my name stayed the same. I found that interesting. I think at least the law should be involved with these types of things, and know that ask at least a child, do you want your name to be this name or not? Because my stepfather did not pay alimony. He did not pay my school fees. He did not put food on the table. He did not buy me any clothes until I was 40. He bought me a dress when I was 40. After I took him to the hospital and changed his dentist and had him treated, because his other daughters wouldn't do it. So I had to do it. And I don't mind doing it, because he might have treated me unfairly, but I look at him as a man who's been scorned, who's been lied to also, who thought he had the love of his life, or thought that he had his freedom, and he was trapped with a baby that he never planned on having. And after that baby, I came, and I wasn't his, and he had to make a lot of decisions that were tough for a man to make at that age and that time in another country. So I don't blame him. He did the best he could do. At least he did not abuse me. Other people, my biological father, abused me. So there, I said it. But my stepdad, I call him once a week. We talk daily on the app. I still have communications with my mother. Uh, so even though a lot of shit happened and you will hear me say a lot of bad things, but at the end of the day, my choice to forgive my parents was mine. To talk with my parents, that's my choice. To still be kind and respectful towards my parents, it's because it's demanded of me. There is a most high power. There is a most high power that created all of us. And if I fail to give thanks, think about their lives and what they had to go through, my parents, I can't blame them. I can only support them and try to pick up the fight if they fought at all. And if they didn't fight, I will start the fight for them. Because they were all treated unfairly, to say the least. My ancient ancestry started about 40,000 years ago in Ethiopia. My DNA consists of 10 different ethnicities and 3 genetic types. It's what science says. Nowadays, I'm starting to reverse engineer what science says because it does not equate to the biology and the nature and the law of things. If I, as a black woman, born in 1978, born by parents that are closely related, but then when I look back the ancestry of both my parents, they come from 2 different lines, ancient lines. And I've been able to trace them back to the line of Aaron and Moses, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because when I check my results on my DNA ancestry, and I can show you, I will insert some pictures where people can actually see my name. This is my true ancestry. If I just, and I'm considered to be a Cape Verdean of Cape Verdean descent. Being that means nothing to me, because being of Cape Verdean descent only says that I was born to people who were born on the islands of Cape Verde or in the vicinity. My mother was born on Saint Thomé en Principe, so that's on the other side, more near the area of where Bioko is. Little islands where during the expulsion of the Jews in Spain and Portugal, they sailed the youngings to West Africa to work on plantations, and they had to change their fate there. Their parents had been burned on the stakes at Mass or before or after. So they started a new story, a new book for those children. On those islands is where my mother was born. So she doesn't know a lot about her ancestry, where all I know is her mother lived in Lisbon. I think that humans all innately have the sense of always returning home. And I think that we all return home unknowingly, but we don't know it. We think that we're stuck in some kind of country that's foreign to us. When I look at the Netherlands, there's nothing foreign about the Netherlands to me. I went to Scotland, I went to England, I've been in Liverpool, in London, in Leicester, I've been in Portugal, I've been in Greece, I've been in Egypt. Nothing about those places feels foreign to me. Every one of those countries, I've even been to Toronto in Canada. I didn't go to the USA because the car had broken down. and we couldn't make that trip from Toronto to New York. I think it's a 2 hour drive down. But unfortunately, I didn't get to make that trip. And at the end of the day, I'm not crying about it because the United States of America is one continent conglomeration of evilness I wouldn't even want to associate myself with. I said it. I said it. Um, so I trace back to a very ancient line, and all the samples are given. I'll show you what I'm looking at right now. This is my website on my True Ancestry DNA. This is my main dashboard where I can see my kit named Neuza, and it gives me an analysis summary of 133 ancient civilizations and growing. New today, lightning bolts, yada yada, add up to blah blah. That's more commercial. But you can get to add up to 2,250 extra matches. So now I have a pink little tab that says ancient populations, ancient samples results with a new full breakdown, my deep dive results for ancient relatives, my modern populations updated admixtures, and then it goes on with full breakdown, matching samples, the top 10 samples by era, outlier samples, and America samples. Yeah, I'm good. I will be showing you what I'm doing. Then it goes on to say that my closest ancient populations. Maybe I can turn you guys around so we won't all have to look at me. Can you see this? Okay. I'm just gonna do it like this.